I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV and Channel 99. Joining us today is Tobias Glidden, Selectman Extraordinaire and Man About Town. Welcome, Tobias.
Thank you, Dan.
Glad to see you.
Pleasure.
You've been a selectman now for about a year and a half.
2 years now, yeah.
2 years and a half.
Yeah, two something.
So you're up for again next
April, yeah.
Well, then maybe I will ask you, but I won't ask you right now. What have been your frustrations?
What have been my frustrations? I guess in general, my frustration has been a lack of focus on kind of bigger, more seismic problems in our culture on the island. And we tend to focus on the little nitty-gritty problems instead of focusing on kind of like bigger steps and where we want to be as a culture 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And so instead, that comes to really to play when it comes to housing. It's been a problem for 50 years on the island,
right.
And we still try to think, let's just build housing instead of trying to deal with some larger phenomenon that's happening on the island.
That's one of the big sort of hot button issues right now. After 50 years, it's finally become one. And, hopefully it will stay one. But traffic and getting around and modes of transportation are something I know you're very interested in.
Yeah, well, I guess the reason why I'm really interested in is from the start of my campaign, I was really interested in the quality of life. And I think having people being able to move around the island safely, comfortably, get their heart rate, down, their blood pressure within the margins, I think is really important. And if people don't feel safe commuting between the mid-island and town, it's bad for business. And ultimately, it just damages the bottom line. If you're flying out of Boston, come to Nantucket, and you leave traffic, and then you come to Nantucket, and you have your nice vacation home, you go to get a sandwich, and it takes you half an hour.
Why are you each way?
Yeah. Why are you coming to Nantucket? Why not shoot off to Morocco where the dollars?
So what are some of your ideas for solutions?
My ideas for solution, or I would hope the community's thoughts would be, because I don't want to be the leader on it. I want the community to embrace it. Would be that we need a bit of a culture shift and to move away from the idea that the car is the best way to get places, and we need to create safe ways for people to commute. So that goes to funding a year-round bus, which I'm working on with the other board members. Providing funding to get the in-town bike path built. Currently on the schedule, it's going to be built in 2025. It's 10 years from now for completion. I think that's way too long. We're going to lose people's lives in that amount of time.
What is involved in your vision of the in-town bike path?
What is involved? My vision is kind of 3 points. So there's the main kind of concept that comes over Goose Pond and down Washington Street, and that's kind of a widening of the lane. Then you come past Charlie Sales into town.
But that's going to be built sooner than 2025.
No, 2025. On the current funding schedule, 2025.
Okay.
So I'm trying to create a little bit of focus from the board to try to focus on this being a real issue that the town needs to address if it wants to continue to attract more and more people here to do business. We need to have ways of functioning, getting people back and forth to do business. And there's a lot of evidence that shows that people walking by shops versus driving by shops is better for businesses.
All right. My theory has always been that the bike path across Goose Pond there is a great idea until you get to Orange Street.
Right. And so once, and ultimately
which is the area just before Marine Home Center.
Right. So you want to talk the nitty gritty. So there's a couple options. Alan Reinhardt has talked for years about kind of like a green belt coming from Maya Comet across. So there's definitely some options of connecting in Bear Street across to Goose Pond and through Mid-Island area across to Sparks Ave, and then maybe you take Sparks to get to the Rotary. What's on the plans now is for a widening in front of Marine Home Center. Regardless, that's going to make it safer. You pick up another 4 feet on each side of the road. That's a bike lane. There's a bike lane in Times Square. It's just like that. It's safe. So that's how I see things moving forward. People say it's a conflict, but there's a lot more busy, dangerous places that there's bike lanes. And Nantucket would be...
No, the conflict as I see it is the present arrangement where basically if there was a bike path there, it would dump out into Orange Street.
Well, currently there's a lot of folks that, bike down that street anyways, and I think diverting them around kind of 2 crucial corners or 3 crucial corners is very important that this route would take.
I think
and then
from a safety standpoint, yeah, but I guess
Yeah, no,
my
no.
view is the concentration of people coming off that path in one place.
Yeah, but you're reducing, you're giving more space to people to get on the bike path safely.
If
You
you
know,
have
the
done,
lane-
if you've done that,
And I think that's what we're going to do in
Yeah.
the future. And that's part of it. You can't fund projects right off the bat. We're working with state funding, and the town and the community hasn't gotten behind funding the project up front. There was Mr. Valero spoke up at our last meeting, talked about how we wanted to fund it faster. I totally agree. You know, it's just an accident waiting to happen. To conduct people there and then not have a way for them to move through that situation safely is negligent on our part, and we need to pick up the pace.
I guess one of the issues, and I haven't really explored this much myself, but one of the issues is the sort of funding capacity, not of the tax base, but of the debt service.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've got two huge projects coming online this year.
Mm-hmm.
We've got $220-some million worth of sewer projects that are out there. We've got the whole issue with the town building and that sort of thing, which
All right, so let's talk finances. So when I first got on the board, I quickly realized that if you want to do anything, you got to make the money work. And I wasn't really prepared for that, but I figured it out fast. So you got to make the town financially work to do anything. And so I worked on capital programs for a long-term financing plan. We looked at the debt service. We looked at when debt is rolling off, when we want to roll on new debt. We now have a pretty good 10-year plan. It's getting updated every year. We've put in systems in place to understand our finances better, even from distant, confusing things such as the dump that we've kind of lost track over the years, and we've had conflicts as a town that a lot of people know about. So, you know, when it comes down to sewers at 240 million or 239 that the paper talked about, I think when ultimately we look at that and we say, well, a lot of that's a little outlying, and when you look at the 10 past years and the amount of money the town spent on infrastructure, not all that sewer work is going to happen in the next 10 years. And some of it is theoretical, and some of it things may change on down the line. But what is going to happen in the future that I think is important is that we are going to, the board is taking a strong stance, and we're hoping to get the town to adopt the policy of, you know, sewering Monomoy and parts of Shimo, some plus parcels to get some good financing, and Mattakit in the future years. And then we have the town buildings. The board recently made a vote to move some of the town offices out to 4 Fairgrounds. That's going to come in a couple $1 million to build that building. You know, 3 or 4.
two fairgrounds.
Yeah, 2 Fairgrounds.
Right.
Thank you for correcting me. And then when you look at kind of the debt schedule and how debt is rolling off, and then we're accruing new debt, we're not really in that much of a financially unstable situation. We're looking very good. And I see it as a way of maintaining what we've done. If we continue to promote growth here on the island through building, and we don't deal with the fundamental infrastructure problems, then we're going to be putting ourselves in a worse off place. So a few $1 million, you know, to finish these projects, including sidewalks, we got a number of damaged sidewalks, is really good for business, and it's going to help the bottom line in Nantucket.
I have to tell you, Tobias, that I'm a little surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be, but if you'd asked me 3 years ago whether I thought you would be talking from a pro-business perspective, I would have said probably not.
Well, you have to. One of the great things about you know, being a policymaker and a leader is you find ways to, you know, you can either try to break down a system or try to make it work better. And I believe in trying to make systems work better. I'm not always pro-business 100% of the time, but when it damages the quality of life and the livelihood of people who live here and the livelihood of people sending money back home to their families, because we have a lot of inequality in the world, and that causes instability and yada, 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 and that causes the housing prices due to inequality, and I have abilities to help deal with that. I try to carry on.